All right.
Thank you. Good evening. This is Chair Johanna Schneider. Welcome to the Brookline Zoning Board of Appeals hearing this evening. Before we begin, I will confirm that all members and other persons anticipated to participate on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jesse Geller. Jesse Geller, do you have audio?
I do now.
Can you respond in the affirmative?
Did you ask me if I was present?
I did ask you if you were present.
I didn't hear it. I'm present.
Thank you. Randolph Micklejohn.
Present.
Wadner OJ. Wadner, can you hear me?
Wadner is muted. I think that may be the problem.
He is also gone.
Yeah, his video disappeared.
Uh-oh.
Polly, if you can keep an eye on the waiting room and
I
let
will.
him in when he crops back up.
Yeah. If he doesn't get on shortly, I can phone him on his cell.
We were doing so well for a minute.
Okay, I'm going to call his cell now.
Johanna, he may be waiting to be let in because Elias Patuchis is also waiting to be let in.
And Jennifer, there's something going on because I was waiting for a long time.
Yeah,
And
I
I don't think Polly
Polly,
saw you in the waiting room.
yeah, I think she just needs to check the waiting room and just admit all, probably. Oh, there we go.
Wadner, welcome back.
Thank you.
Are you present and can you hear me?
Yes, I am.
Okay, staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Polly Salco, you're muted, so please unmute before you say that you're present and can hear me.
Present.
All speakers should identify themselves by name prior to speaking. This hearing of the ZBA in open session is being conducted remotely and in a manner that is consistent with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, which authorizes this body to meet entirely remotely so long as adequate alternative means of access is provided. Adequate public access does not include public participation. Unless such participation is required by law, this hearing will feature public comment. For this hearing, the ZBA is convening by video conference via Zoom as posted on the town's calendar, which identifies how the public may access the hearing. Please be advised that this hearing is and that some attendees may be participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer, as anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are also available to the public and may be accessed through the town website or by request from planning staff. Finally, before turning to tonight's business, I will cover some ground rules that will permit clear and effective conduct of this meeting and help to ensure accurate minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda after they conclude their remarks. I will invite each member by name to provide any comment, question, or motion. Please hold yours until your name is called. Please also remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking and to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Before responding, please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in sidebar comment with other members, please do so through me. Any vote taken in this hearing will be conducted by roll call vote. Finally, for the public comment component of this hearing, I will first ask members of the public, if there are any, who wish to speak to identify themselves by name and address. I will call on each by name. Please enter your name in the chat section. You can find the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. Click on this icon and the chat window will appear on the right. Polly will cue the members in the order in which the request is received. The conduct of this hearing will be very similar to the several hearings we have had on this matter before. This is the continued public hearing on the November 21, 2023 comprehensive permit application submitted by CH Realty Ventures, LLC. This is pursuant to Chapter 40B of the Massachusetts General Laws. There have to date been 8 public hearings on this project in November 2023, May 2024, July 2024, October 2024, January 2025, March 2025, April 2025, and May 7th, April 2025. We have received, since the last hearing on May 7th, a number of letters, emails, and comments from the public, many of which are legal in nature. So before we begin, I have asked Jonathan Simpson from Town Council's office to address these legal matters for both the benefit of the board and the benefit of the public. Jonathan Simpson, are you with us?
I am, yes.
Could you please comment on the various legal matters that have been raised in comment letters submitted to the board on this application over the last handful of weeks?
Absolutely. For the record, again, I'm Jonathan Simpson. I'm First Assistant Town Council for the town of Brookline. I will start with a bit of an overview of the 40B comprehensive permit scheme, because as the chair stated, we've received questions at all different levels of it. So at the highest level, the Chapter 40B is meant to set up the town's zoning board of appeals as sort of a one-stop shop for any local permitting needed by one of these multifamily residential developments that has an affordable component. To the extent this project needs any review or approval from any local board, commission, department, it all gets kind of sucked into this hearing. So several questions were raised, for example, about why hasn't the transportation board, doesn't the transportation board have to permit something? The answer with respect to this project is no. Their authority to the extent they have any authority that is pertinent to this project, that authority rests with the Zoning Board of Appeals. As you can, specifically, the relief requested is in the form of a list of waivers from various local requirements that will be included, is already included in the materials. The final list will be included as an exhibit to the comprehensive permit. An examination of that list, of course, shows that most of the waivers that the project is requesting, unsurprisingly, are waivers from our zoning bylaw, whose authority variances from which already rest with the board, although, of course, this is not a variance, this is a comprehensive permit. But to the extent there are waivers required from other boards and commissions, those would be happening here and would go on that list. Specifically for this project, we have, for example, waivers from the Preservation Commission's review, as well as, and I'll get to this one a little bit later in more detail, waiver from the stormwater review customarily performed by the Department of Engineering. So we have our comprehensive permit process. Moving to the specific situation surrounding this project, the critical fact, and this has been raised by several members of the public, a question about whether or not the town has met its state mandated goal of the provision of affordable housing. For the purposes of this project, particularly, and particularly for the reasons that I'll be addressing tonight, for the purposes of how what the board's posture must be with respect to this project, the answer is no. The town has not met its what's called the statutory minima for the provision of affordable housing. That is calculated as of the date of the application. As of the date of the application for this project, the town was below the 10% statutory minimum on the subsidized housing inventory for that of housing, of the percentage of the housing inventory that is affordable. It also did not meet any of the other potentially applicable statutory minima. So as I go forward with the rest of my presentation today, and as the board goes forward with their review, please do keep in mind that we are under that required threshold. So that will very much impact what the board can and can't do here. I will note that to sort of bolster that point, it has been raised like, well, we're close now, or maybe we're even over it now. Again, that you calculate it based on the date of application. Moreover, were we to attempt to make an argument that we have nonetheless made substantial progress towards meeting that goal, or some other argument that we should be considered to be above the threshold, the date we could make that argument with respect to this project has passed. Under the regulations, you are required to tell an applicant, if the board is required to tell the applicant if it intends to take a posture that the statutory minima has been met and it can do a more intensive review of the project, it must do that within 15 days of the opening of the hearing. It did not do so. We are precluded from acting in a manner at this point that the town has met the required statutory minimum. So what does that mean? That means that it is assumed that there is a regional need for affordable housing. That affects this project, or the board's ability to review this project, in as much as the board's ability to either deny or issue a permit with conditions is significantly constrained, because there is now a presumption that the town has a need for affordable housing, which in almost all cases will outweigh any other local concerns. That is a local concerns, capital L, capital C, that outweighs just about anything. Any attempt that the board makes to do something that would conflict with that or impair that local concern, it is a significant threshold that you must demonstrate that that the local concern in question outweighs that need for affordable housing. That is a very high bar to clear. Moreover, the applicant, to the extent the board attempts to impose conditions on the project, the applicant may argue that those conditions make the project uneconomic. And if that is the case, then it is almost certainly a situation where once they're able to demonstrate that, if the board nonetheless attempts to impose a condition that will render the project uneconomic, it will have a very difficult time keeping that condition in when the project is appealed, which is of course an option available to the applicant if the board opts to deny this permit or issue a permit with conditions the applicant does not agree with. It may appeal to the excuse me, the Housing Appeals Committee, the HAC or HAC, and that is a committee that in their review, they follow that rubric that I just outlined, wherein once an applicant is able to show that the condition renders their project uneconomic, it is very difficult for a local board to demonstrate that nonetheless we should be able to render this condition. We should be able to impose this condition, because at the end of the day, like I said, there's an overriding need for affordable housing if you are below that statutory minimum. The final thing on sort of my the big overview is that to the extent the board is choosing between a denial and a issuance of a permit with conditions, the understanding is that the board should always opt towards the latter to the extent you can. Get to where you want to be, meet your local concerns with a permit, with a grant with conditions. You are supposed to go that direction. So I will move now to the specific questions, the specific issues raised by abutters. And these kind of fall into two, I would argue, big buckets, sort of matters outside the ZBA's jurisdictions and matters within it. The first of the matters outside the ZBA's jurisdiction are matters that are reserved for the subsidizing agency. The subsidizing agency is the agency that will help the applicant. The state level will help the applicant with the funding for the project, and their role in this is to review the project at the outset. Make sure it is in compliance with the state level requirements, specifically whether the applicant has sufficiently demonstrated that they will obtain site control by the time the project is ready to go, that they are a applicable entity, they need to be an LLC or a nonprofit, and that the project is fundable, that it will have that the applicant has demonstrated that by the time the project's ready to go, that they will be able to get the funds ready to actually build what they're saying they're going to build. I believe that to the extent there is a quote single entity requirement, that the applicant be a single entity, that is basically a repurposing of several of those requirements, that essentially an applicant has to be the LLC, has to be the nonprofit, and has to have site control. A single applicant has to have site control of the property. So all of those things I just mentioned, site control, single entity, fundability, nature of the applicant, all of those are matters reserved for the subsidizing agency. And for the purposes of the board's review, any questions related to that are meant to be, any requirements related to that are meant to be met at this stage by the project eligibility letter, or PEL letter. So under the regulations, that is supposed to satisfy any inquiry the board can make with respect to those, supposed to satisfy the board with respect that those requirements have been met. Now, I know staff has spoken with the subsidizing agency. I understand some of the neighbors have as well. It has been noted by the agency that the board can certainly feel empowered to investigate those issues. I believe the board has done so to some extent in this hearing already. The board can ask questions about those, make sure that what the applicant has said in the past is true. However, the board cannot ultimately grant a permit or put conditions on a permit or deny a permit based on any of those requirements. They could not, for example, say, we're going to give you a permit on the condition that you come back to us in 6 months and let us double check that you've got all your fundability ready to go. And if we don't think you do, we're going to take your permit away. We cannot do that. Fundability is an issue for the subsidizing agency. Jurisdictionally, it is outside of what the board is empowered to act on. Again, they can investigate it, and they can, to the extent they want to put a condition related to it, they can put what I believe is referred to as a condition of compliance in the permit, which is essentially saying this permit is contingent on you meeting the requirements of the subsidizing agency for final approval. So if the subsidizing agency says you're not fundable when the time has arrived to make that decision, and you don't get it, that is effectively voids your permit. So that is about the extent of what the board can do with respect to those matters. And I will reemphasize that includes this so-called single entity requirement. I believe it is outside of the jurisdiction of the board to really act on it. We're supposed to kind of take the subsidizing agency and let them handle those type of issues. The other big matter that that neighbors have raised that I believe is properly characterized as outside of the board's jurisdiction is matters related to General Laws Chapter 21E and its attendant regulations, which is the Massachusetts Contingency Plan. This is the state statute that relates to oil or hazardous materials release and ultimately cleanup. Essentially, the board's power is to grant waivers from local requirements. That is a state requirement. The board can't give them can't make it easier on them with respect to 21E. It also can't make them make things harder on the applicant with respect to those matters. So, and I will drill to what I believe is the issue in this case, which is that it is our understanding from the subsidizing agency that to the extent that what's called a phase 1 ESA will be required before final approval can be obtained. My understanding is there are members of the public who want to require that the applicant provide such a phase 1 report on all parcels, not just the ones it has provided to date, now, and make that a condition of the permit. I believe that jurisdictionally that is outside of what the board can ask because it is in excess of what is required under the State Act. The State Act requires that they follow the State Act and they follow the attendant regulations. The subsidizing agency has its own requirements. Specifically, they're going to require that they do a phase 1 ESA, but that does not mean they have to do one right now. I'm not saying that wouldn't be a good idea to do one right now. And I do firmly believe that the board should feel empowered to put the applicant on the spot tonight to specify exactly what they plan to do prior to obtaining final approval. And then again, can then incorporate that into a condition of compliance that essentially this is what the applicant tells you what they're intending to do to comply with Chapter 21E in the Massachusetts Contingency Plan. And the board says, okay, you've told us what you're going to do. It is now a condition of the permit that you do what you said you are going to do, because that's what you're doing, what's required under the law. We cannot, however, impose additional requirements. This would include requiring, for example, them to pay for another a third-party licensed service professional to review all the materials, or to come back to the board once they've performed the phase 1 ESA and let the board take another look at the permit. That's not allowed. That would be an additional requirement above and beyond what's required by state law. There is no local bylaw or local requirement even in Brookline that would kick into effect here that the board would ostensibly be utilizing. They would be sort of generating this new requirement and imposing it, and that would, unfortunately, is not something they're empowered to do under 40B. So moving now to neighborhood concerns that I believe fall within the board's ambit, that the things that they can and should and have looked at already. Stormwater is an issue, is a matter of local concern. It is a matter regulated under our bylaws, my understanding is, this is what I've advised, is that but for some back and forth in the last couple of days, the applicant was requesting a waiver from the stormwater on what it had proposed. Measure, which moves their stormwater system slightly farther from the property line. To drill down a little bit, my understanding is that satisfied one aspect of review, the DEP handbook.
We are apparently cursed this evening when it comes to Zoom. Polly, if you could please keep an eye on the waiting room and be ready to let Jonathan in when he rejoins us.
I will do that.
There he
I
is.
see him.
Hello? Can
Jonathan,
anyone?
welcome back.
He seems to be freezing still.
Ollie?
Yes,
Jonathan, can you hear us? Jonathan,
Hello? Can you hear me now?
we can hear you. Your video is frozen. If you
Can
want
anyone hear
to,
me?
yes, can you hear us?
Oh, no.
maybe Jonathan should turn off his video. That might help.
I can
He
hear
can't-
you.
I think he's gone again. Jonathan, you're muted. Do you want to turn off your video and see if you can conserve some bandwidth that way?
It's a great idea. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes, we can.
I'm very sorry, you all. So
You were talking about stormwater, Jonathan.
stormwater, yes. My understanding is that the applicant had requested a waiver from the town's stormwater requirements. It had modified its plans to mitigate one of the impacts, moving the stormwater system further from the property line. And while that did, I believe, address one concern and satisfy a potential requirement that would have triggered review, it triggered a different requirement. So it is my understanding that review under the stormwater bylaw is still something that will need to be waived. And it is the board has the authority to waive that requirement. And this goes all the way back to the beginning of my presentation. To the extent the board does not want to waive that condition, to waive that requirement and somehow impose a condition that would require them to meet all of the requirements, I believe the only way they could do so would be to, at this point, would be to move the building itself. That would be the kind of thing that would trigger an applicant arguing that that condition would make my project uneconomic, which then the board would have to attempt to say, well, this local concern for stormwater outweighs that, which is an extraordinarily difficult thing to prove and is probably, frankly, futile thing, in my opinion, to attempt to prove. But suffice to say, the stormwater, while it is something the board can review, the applicant has requested a waiver from those requirements. Traffic, that's another area of local concern, which there are local requirements that the board is empowered to investigate and potentially impose conditions related to. The applicant and the board has made multiple presentations on what it intends to do with respect to traffic. There is one legal issue that has come up, is the notion of whether it's appropriate for the town to be giving land to the project owner to make this traffic diet work. That is a mistaken characterization of what is happening. There is no land being transferred for the purposes of this project. All land that the road diet is being involved in the plans where the sidewalk is getting bumped out and the bump in for deliveries and pickup and drop off is being constructed at the applicant's cost. That land was public land and will remain public land. So there is no transfer that would potentially necessitate a town meeting vote. So I did want to speak to that. So those were the legal issues that had been raised over the last couple of weeks that I'm aware of. The final thing I would note is that because unlike projects under 40A, projects under 40B only require a majority vote of the board to be issued. So to the extent the board intends to vote tonight, I would advise the public of that. And then I will be online for the remainder of the hearing to the extent anyone has any legal questions for me.
Thank you, Jonathan. I want to pause before turning this over to Polly to see if any board members have questions either about Jonathan's remarks or Any other legal counsel type items that have come up in our review to date? I'll start with Randolph. Randolph Micklejohn, do you have any questions for Jonathan?
I don't, and I do appreciate the presentation, Jonathan. It's very instructive.
Thanks, Randolph. Jesse Geller.
I don't, other than a compliment for Jonathan. That was excellent and very helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. And Wadner, anything for Jonathan by way of questions?
Yes, I do. I would like to know, does the state subsidy tied up to the affordable housing requirement?
Sorry, does this, can you repeat the question? You cut out.
Yeah, the question is, does the state subsidy, you talk about the states, the applicant has to meet some requirement related to the state subsidy. My question is, does that related to the affordable housing, how many units of affordable housing gonna be part of the project in order for the applicant to obtain state subsidy for the project?
I believe so. Yes, I believe that is among the things they need to apply to the subsidizing agency with is a description of what the affordability component of their project is intended to be.
And Wadner, I would just chime in and I would say that under 40B, in order to be eligible to move forward with a 40B application, certain statutory and regulatory criteria have to be met, and that includes the inclusion of a certain percentage of deed restricted affordable units as part of the overall project.
Can I follow up? The reason why I asked that question is I don't know you discussed the affordable requirement, whether they will meet this threshold. Does the project has to contribute to the affordable threshold for the town, or it has to meet a certain requirement threshold? That's the reason why I asked that question.
So I think there are two issues here. One is having to do with the statutory minimum, which Jonathan was addressing at the outset, which is that if a town does not have 10% of its total housing stock as affordable housing as defined in 40B, then the posture of the board when it's reviewing a comprehensive permit application is different than if the town has met that 10% requirement. So that's what Jonathan was talking about in the beginning. But as I was saying, in order to move forward with a 40B project, generally, an applicant has to go first to a state subsidizing agency, again, defined term under 40B, and submit and have approved a request for a project eligibility letter. And that is a state level review that basically says this project checks the boxes under the statute and regulations to move forward under Chapter 40B. That includes provision of either 20% or 25%, depending on the affordability level, of total units within that project as affordable units. So for this project to even come to us, it needed a project eligibility letter from the state saying that it had met the state review criteria preliminarily and could move forward with local review. But that and the 10% statutory.
Well, thank you. I'm just seeing that it seems like there's two different requirements. There's the state threshold to meet the subsidized requirement to get subsidy from the state, and also there's the requirement for the town threshold. Is that the way it is? I'm trying to understand how.
I apologize. The threshold I was speaking of with respect to the town is town-wide. Town-wide, we need to have 10% of our housing stock needs to be affordable effectively. That's the threshold that the town had not met, because therefore, when an applicant for a 40B comes in, that's the ZBA's posture has to be has to take that into account. So that to the extent I was speaking of like a 10% 10%, that's this townwide, that's the townwide statutory minima. The project itself has to meet certain state criteria that Joanna was just mentioning to be fundable, to qualify for the programs. And those, like she said, are usually 20% or at least 20% or 25%, depending on what you are going to be renting or selling renting the units at, like what percentage of adjusted median income.
So just to clarify, the state threshold is not in conflict with the town threshold. Is that correct?
I think we're talking about
I
two
mean-
separate things, Wadner.
No, I mean, I know the 10% and also the minimum requirement for the statutory for the state. But the reason why I'm asking this question is because somebody raised it as an issue, but basically my understanding is they meet the threshold for the statutory level.
The project itself is providing the required percentage of affordable units within the project. I think the question that we got from a member of the public and that Jonathan was addressing at the outset of his comments is whether or not the town has satisfied the 10% statutory minimum. If we had met that at the time that this applicant filed its application, then we would be more free to either deny or condition this project without that denial or a conditioned approval being overruled by the Housing Appeals Committee. But because the town was under that 10% when this application was filed in 2023, we are in a posture now where we have to reconcile, we're presumed to have a need for affordable housing in the town. And that means that the stringency of our review, our ability to condition the project or deny the project is significantly constrained by 40B. Once you go over that 10% number, you can do whatever you want. But if you're under the 10% number, which the town was when this was filed, we are largely handcuffed by what 40B says we can and can't do.
Thank you, Joan.
Okay. All right. Any more questions for Jonathan? Okay, Jonathan, thank you. That was very helpful. And we may have additional need for you as the hearing progresses, but that was a great way for us to start. So thank you. Polly, I know you have been waiting to give us an update on the status since the last hearing.
Yes. Polly Selko, Director of Regulatory Planning. At the last hearing, the board discussed revisions to the draft waiver list and conditions and also went over the draft decision. Tonight, the board will hear about the revised stormwater plan and then we'll review the revised waiver list, updated decision, and conditions. I would like to add that all of the different departments in Town Hall have reviewed the decision and the conditions and have agreed that they represent what they would like to see. And this includes the building department, the health department, the Department of Public Works, the fire department, and of course, town council's office. I would add that I spoke with Katie Lacey at the MHP, which is the subsidizing agents, and she clarified for me that as far as she was concerned, the Pell that they issued was issued correctly, that the ownership issue was not a problem, that it's really at the time that funding is actually granted that they have to prove that they have site control. And she had no concerns also about having them do environmental tests after the comprehensive permit. She explained to me, which I found very interesting and didn't know, that it may not be MHP that eventually funds this project. It could be another agency that funds it. And that agency would have to make sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. So she felt that their agency had done the correct thing and that we were doing the correct thing by holding this hearing. With that, I will turn it over to the applicant's attorney to introduce DeVrellis and Ryan, who will give a report on the updated or revised stormwater plan.
Thank you, Polly. Good evening, members of the board, and thank you very much, Jonathan, for attending and giving that presentation. I just want to go over a few things, and first let me tell you who is here with me this evening as part of the project team. We have both of our engineers who you've seen before, James DeVellis and Imad Zrain. James and Imad have been working on the stormwater design. I do also want to say that there is a condition that we've agreed to that no building permit is going to be issued until each department has reviewed everything and signed off. So although we will still need the waiver for the setback near our building, when we go over the waivers, you'll see that that's in there again. We have agreed with Dan Murphy to allow a full site plan and stormwater design review before building permit. In addition, I wanted to say, and I think Jonathan already addressed this, that we did voluntarily go to the transportation board, even though we didn't have to. That's pretty common practice, and it behooves the applicants to work with DPW and even attend the transportation board hearing relative to traffic, parking, and particularly this so-called road diet where the applicant has agreed to bump out and plant street trees and make the sidewalk wider in that area. No transfer of ownership, of course. And all of that needs to be reviewed and meet the town specifications before any of that work would begin. The applicant has agreed to pay for all of that, including review of any signage for a loading zone. And that's common throughout town, these road diets and widening of sidewalks to add street trees. I've done it on several other 40Bs in Brookline, and it's also done on non-40Bs. The hotel, for example, on Brookline Ave, we widened the sidewalks there with the permission of the town to make it more pleasant walking and to add more trees. So that's pretty common. There was a question that was raised about design changes. So Polly and I checked our notes, and we met several times with Cliff Bomer during the design review of this project. Cliff Bomer indicated that he was satisfied with the design changes that were made, which reduced the massing and gave it a better, wider step back on the western parcel. He did like the idea and encouraged us to meet with DPW, which we did several times, to widen the sidewalk and add the trees. So he was supportive there. I also wanted to talk about the blasting conditions. They are extensive. Polly and I reviewed them again. They are the same conditions that were included in the very close by, I believe it's 1180 Boylston Rajnahanda's project on the corner of Route 9 and Hammond. So we made sure to follow those. I will say that I work in other communities and just completed a 40B in Natick, and the blasting condition was simply it needed to meet state law and be approved by the fire department. And part of the blasting conditions, which are extensive in this decision and agreed to, includes further review by the fire department before any blasting can happen. And it also includes all the conditions that we went over at the last hearing, and we'll go over again. A couple of things. So the other thing on the stormwater. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim DeVellis, but before I do, I just want to say that it is now 10 feet away from the property line on that western side next to the abutter, who has raised this several times. And it is 16 feet away from the actual house. This is a relatively new system that was able to do this. And Jim's going to speak to that in a minute. Finally, with respect to ownership of the parcels, we brought in our 40B consultant, attorney Peter Freeman. He went through all of the ownership documents and provided you with a memo because we want to be completely transparent. There's one person, if you trail back, who has control of all of these parcels, and they're in various LLCs. There are purchase and sale agreements. But again, even though it's outside the jurisdiction, as Jonathan said, and it's been determined at the state level that ownership has been met and these other issues have been met, we wanted to provide that to you. And Peter Freeman is here, and he's ready to answer any questions that the board may have on that particular issue. Finally, on the environmental, Jonathan said this, it's outside the jurisdiction. We all know we have to meet 21E, but we have agreed to conditions, Johanna, which you asked us to consider, and those we went over. We'll go over them again. I suggested adding, this was something Wadner, I think, wanted, adding an exhibit which outlines the MCP process and incorporating that into the decision. You'll see that when we go over the decision. Also, rather than adding in the testimony of our LSP, Ralph Tella, I refer to the date of his testimony and incorporate the exhibit. So you'll see that when we go over the decision. Finally, I just have to say this because it's been incredible. The amount of disparaging comments that have been made about this project team, including threatening the license of our very respected engineer, Jim DeVellis. I think it would really cross the line, and the words misrepresentation and misled have been used over and over and over again in documents and a testimony, also in front of the select board at a meeting that I was on public comment. And I just want to say that it borders on defamation. It's not necessary. And it's not true that we haven't tried to address all of these issues that have been raised, because they're valid issues. But to say we haven't addressed them is not correct. We've had all of our engineers meeting with town departments, and I just wanted to state that for the record. But I appreciate everybody's time. And before we pull up the waivers, Peter's here, Peter Freeman, on the ownership issues, if you have questions. If you don't, then we'll go right to James, but that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Wadner, do you need to hear from Peter Freeman with respect to the ownership issue? I will note that he did submit a memo to the record that
Yeah, I
members
really,
have
I
reviewed.
did, I think Jonathan's presentation kind of clarified everything. I did went to the Norfolk County Registry of Deeds. I did notice that there were at least 2 different ownership, but it's now the issue is if it's a state issue is mute. I don't think I need to ask any question, but the record is there showing that there's the property, the lot, the project is not under one ownership. It's multiple.
Okay, Randolph, do you have any questions for Peter Freeman?
I've reviewed Attorney Freeman's June 4th letter, and I have no questions.
Jesse Geller?
I do not.
I have also reviewed the memo and I have no questions, but thank you for being here, Attorney Freeman. Jennifer, do you want to have Mr. DeVellis enlighten us as to the changes in the stormwater plan now?
Yes, and Polly, Jim may need to pull up a plan. So if you could make him host, and when he's done, may not need to pull anything up, but if you could make him host, and then when he's done, make me host.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, members of the board. Can you hear me okay? Great, thank you. Yeah, I'll try to, I'm still disabled. When I can, I'll share the screen. There we go. Okay, can you all see that?
Not yet. Now we can see it.
Okay, so these are the site plans. Again, for the record, Jim DeVellis, a professional civil engineer with DeVellis Arena. So this is the survey. Nothing changed on that. This is a layout plan, C1. Nothing changed on that plan, just basically shows the building from a bird's eye view looking down. On C1B, this is where we made a change, and it's basically on the left side. There was a lot of discussion over the last couple meetings of the infiltration system in close proximity to the property line. So I'll zoom in a little bit. Oops. Sorry. Zooming in, I'm changing pages. I'm sorry. Well, I'm trying to zoom in, but it's not zooming in. You can see this. So basically, this is the infiltration trench along the side, and what is in red is what changed. So all of the anxiety of, we had it 6 foot from the property line, and there was a request to make it 10 foot to avoid differential between the guidelines. So
Jim, sorry, can I stop you? We really
Sure.
cannot read the numbers. Can you try hitting there's a plus in the bottom right corner of the column on your screen? Just hit the little plus magnifying glass.
Yeah,
Way over in,
yeah,
well, it's way over on the right.
Yeah, but when let me see.
Or hit
Sometimes they're on.
It's in the
control
bottom.
control plus sometimes works.
Yeah.
I apologize. Sorry, 1 second. Let me try this again. Stop sharing. Yeah, I know the plus sign, but it for some reason it's not showing up right.
There you
how's
go.
that? All right. Thank you.
There
All
we
right, so
go.
it's a little larger. So what this represents is in the yellow, this is the area that changed. So this is your property line, if you can see my cursor.
Mhm.
From here to here is 10 feet. From the existing building, the house is from here to the system, which is 16 feet. So I did receive the correspondence that said we're only 2 feet and 6 feet, but that was a misrepresentation of what we sent on our plans. Again, property line in the system is 10 feet. Separation from the existing house to the system is 16 feet. This dark line is the impervious barrier that we put in as a safety measure. So what this system is the system that we had designed previously was an arch system. It's basically like a egg carton shape, and it was surrounded by crushed stone. This system is a little different. It's called a permavoid. So it's still a plastic system. It goes underground, but there's no stone in it. It's 100% voids. So we were able to narrow the system down and keep it in this corridor, and then move it 4 feet away from the property line to make 10 feet. So that's the entire system. There was some confusion, I think, in some of the correspondence that was sent back to us that we were right up against the property line. This square here and this square here represent catch basins. So everything that, you know, the hydrology of this site right now is it flows from right to left and it goes in this direction. There's going to be nothing that's going to go past the property line. It's going to go into these catch basins, which has always been in this design, back into the system, infiltrate into the ground with 4 feet below it. And then how does it get out? So after it fills up, it goes out to this box here, which is an outlet control structure. So you have 2 pipes that come from the system, small pipe here, and a couple other pipes here, goes into a box, and then goes out a 10-inch pipe back into the town storm drain system, which is here. So during the review, and I know there was concern of if there's back-to-back storms or there's so much surcharge going into the ground, how's it going to affect the properties nearby? So initially what we did is we went out and we surveyed the basement floors of the houses, and to make sure our system is not above that, it's below it. So water flows downhill or sideways for a little bit. So the bottom of the system is below the foundation basement floors. And just in case, we put an impervious barrier around the system that goes even further deeper. So in order for the water to go up towards that basement, it's going to go down, over, back up, and then uphill. So we thought that was a safety measure. The town engineer, Dan Murphy, suggested, could we put a small pipe in here in the outlet, an additional small pipe in the outlet control structure? So if there's any water that stays in the system, and it may be right after a storm, or it may be 10 years from now if there's an issue. So we added an extra 2-inch pipe that comes out the bottom. And what that 2-inch pipe does, it does not upset the hydrology. So you still, what we're able to do with this design is we were able to reduce the rate that the stormwater comes off site, the volume, the quantity of runoff that is here, just for the fact that, one, there's less roof surface and pavement than there is now, so that naturally is going to decrease it. And we added the infiltration, which the town wants to recharge the groundwater, which is above and beyond. So the only changes in the plan are highlighted in the red box. So again, extra pipe here, a narrower system here to keep the 10-foot separation and to keep the 10-foot separation. This house here is 16.4 feet from here. We revised the infiltration system detail to put in the new system, the impervious, all of the elevations. Again, nothing changed here. This is the existing foundation. This is the bottom of the system. We made it narrower, but all the other elevations stayed identical. Distance to the 4 feet below the system itself, everything else stays identical. So those are the changes that we made. And speaking to Dan Murphy on it, I believe it was a good discussion, and it was, again, above and beyond that what we're required to do, because in and itself we are reducing impervious surface already, and then this additional stuff which helps the town on all their outside permitting, MS4 and everything, is a good thing, and it reduces the phosphates as well. So we're not asking for any variances from peaks, runoff, volumes, anything on the site, and it's above and beyond what's required.
Thank you, Mr. DeVellis. I want to make sure the board has the opportunity to ask Mr. DeVellis questions. I also do want to ask Dan Murphy, who I believe is in the Zoom, to provide the board with an overview of his comments on this system. But first, let's check and see if we have any board questions or comments. Randolph.
Thank you. Just 2 questions. One, just a baseline review, Mr. DeVellis, if you don't mind. Is it the case that the areas that contribute stormwater to this system in the ground are, 1, the roof of the building, and 2, the strip of land between the building and its west property line?
Yeah, it's between the prop and some of the areas in between the building. It's pitched from east to west. So, and again, to that point, we are, capturing it all, putting it underground here. And then any surface runoff between the property line and the building is going to be collected in the catch basins and directed away from the abutter's property. Okay, is that in the grading for the project that the surface, the earth on the surface of the ground is graded away, from your property line back towards your building? Yeah, the fact that we put rims on here, and the rims are 6 to 8 inches below the property line elevation along the edge. Okay. And just one related question while I'm asking, and this is really for Jennifer though. Jennifer, did you say something about needing a waiver for the offset of the system from your building's foundation, or did I mishear that?
No, so very late this afternoon, we got an email saying that Dan, and it wasn't from Dan, it was from Jonathan, who had spoken to Dan, who thought we might still need the waiver for the setback of the system to our building. So we should put the requested waiver queue back in just for the setback from our building, but I need Jim and Dan to speak to whether that's actually needed.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just to add a little more question, and then I'll listen. I went back and looked at the previous set of waivers, Jennifer, and it was it was unclear from the way the requirement was written, which just said, this was for the May meeting, setback for infiltration required 10 feet, but it doesn't say from what. And we've been talking about it as from property line, but it sounds like
Yes,
the building is,
we've been talking about it from the property line.
right.
And that was always my understanding. So that's something that Jim and Dan need to speak to.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
so.
Thank you.
Thank you. So going back to the original discussions on, this is a redevelopment and we are decreasing impervious, et cetera, you to do what is as most as practicable in their guidelines. So I've been doing this for 30 years. If you go anywhere, I've never asked for a waiver from this. If you go anywhere in Boston, they require you to put them under the buildings because there's no lot lines, right? So you dig down under the buildings and you put stone and pipe and you infiltrate underneath the building. So obviously that doesn't necessitate any waivers because you're within the building, never mind 10 feet away from the building. So I've just never had to ask for a waiver from a guideline until these meetings here. And again, going back to the redevelopment where it's a redevelopment and not a new project.
Joanna, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, Wadner, do you have any questions for Jim DeVellis?
Yes, just clarification. Can you show us the original line where the system was close to the property line?
I don't have it on my computer, but this is 10 feet. And before it was 6 feet, so it's probably right up to here. This is where it was. So we moved it an additional 4 feet over.
Okay, my next question, because of that change, you just kind of answered the question. There wouldn't be any overflow going inside the building.
No, what we did, what I'm showing you is just the plan change. We did it in a complete new hydrological analysis, a drainage report, and submitted that as well. It's like 60 pages. And we evaluated the site for the 210, 50, 100-year storms. Everything works identical to what was before. So surface water continues to go into the system infiltrates. When it is at capacity, the emergency overflow is here. So it would go down in this elevation. If you can see here, you're down at 182.9, so say 183, and you're here at 179.6. So you've got a couple feet where it flows on a large pipe, a 10-inch pipe, down to a very large system. So in order for this to back up anywhere on the abutter's property, the entire street would have to be under, 4 or 5 feet of water. So it's not possible.
So my question is the actual building, that the one that we're viewing right now. So is this gonna be moving it back? Is that gonna affect the integrity of the building that we?
Oh, I see. I misunderstood your question. No.
Yeah.
Where this is, it's below grade parking garage. So it'll be waterproofed, new foundation, new concrete. You could honestly, you could push this right up against the wall and it would make an effect to the building. It's brand new construction and it's watertight.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Jesse, any questions?
Just to be clear, you're not relocating the building. You've just relocated the
Correct.
drainage system.
Yeah, by modifying the design, we went from a wider system to a narrower and got rid of the stone, and that we were able to accomplish that.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Dan Murphy, I'm wondering if you could give us a few minutes of your time to talk about your review and conclusions about this updated stormwater system.
Sure. Yeah, I received some comments and had some discussions with folks and wanted to take a look. I was uncertain about the 10-foot offset. So I thought that it would make sense to relocate it further just to be safe. And so I made that recommendation. The other comment I had was about if there was a relief valve, a type of small diameter pipe, I thought one might just provide some safety measures just in case. To allow the water out, so you wouldn't have a mounting effect, the water would be able to bleed out pretty relatively slowly after an event, just to provide some safety. So those were the two things that came up that we talked about, and I thought they both made sense.
Okay, and is it your position that this updated stormwater system is more compliant with the stormwater handbook requirements than the prior system?
I'd say it's equivalent. The only thing we did add the small drain, which would allow it to slowly bleed out after a big storm. So that's just, I think that just is like a safety thing, just to make sure that there wasn't any issues with that. And but it's probably a little bit less compliant, a little bit less volume, but not a lot. That would infiltrate, yeah.
Jesse Geller, any questions for Dan Murphy?
No, you've asked the one question that I would have had.
Wadner, any questions for Dan Murphy?
No questions. Thank you.
Randolph, any questions for Dan Murphy?
No questions.
Thank you. And thanks, Dan Murphy, for being with us. And thanks, Mr. DeVallis. Jennifer, do you have anything else that you want to present either about the revised stormwater plan or any other adjustments to the project that would be new to the board this evening?
No, I have nothing else. I just want to confirm with Dan Murphy that it is his recommendation to keep in the waiver for the setback to our building, not the property line.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, so we will keep that in. Thank you, Dan. I don't have any further, Johanna, other than to say that all of the changes to the waiver list that Randolph mainly wanted were incorporated. I'm ready to go through that. We're hoping that the board would vote that, and then I'm also prepared to go over the updated decision that Polly and I have met with. I mean, the notes in the decision are mine because I was the lead drafter, but I met with Polly and she told me what to put in, etc. And I think we've covered pretty much everything that the board members asked us to cover in our meetings. But I'm happy to go over that. And we did give another extension through this evening. And we would like to request that if there's nothing substantive after we've gone through this, that the board close the hearing.
Understood. So I think that the next item we will take up is the revised waiver list. Jennifer, I don't know if you or someone on your team has that available to pull up on the screen to walk through with the board.
I will.
Yes, I think Polly will make me the host and then
Yes.
I will do my best to pull that up.
Great, thank you.
And I'm going to go back to the May 28th version, which includes all of the changes, but keeps in the waiver that Dan Murphy suggested we keep in.
Here you are, our co-host now.
Okay. So here, again, this is the waiver list. This is the version revised as of May 28th. So it was after our last hearing. And I went over this with Polly, and we've added the language that Randolph requested on each one to actually, instead of trying to summarize what the bylaw said, we added the actual language to clarify it. So there's no additions other than right here. Let me show you this. This is what Dan Bennett wanted included, to be clear that design review is waived except for the existing conditions plan review, the drawings, the utility services will be reviewed, any advertising features, safety and security, and energy efficiency. Those will all be subject to review by the building commissioner. So he wanted those to be included, and that we've gone over those already during this hearing, and they're included in the plans. And then other than that, everything, unless you have questions, I can quickly go through it again. This is the first one. A is use number 6. So in this one, the requested waiver is for this district in LNG. The ground floor of a building must have at least 60% of its frontage along a street to a depth of at least 15 feet devoted to uses not to include residential related and parking. And this particular development has no commercial space on the ground floor. Then 408 is the inclusionary housing requirements. This will meet the 40B requirements with respect to affordability. So that's B. Then here, this was the parking garage setback, and we added the proposed garage door is setback 16 feet from the Sheafe Street lot line. And if I fail to mention, Dennis Greenwood, our architect, is also on if there are particular questions for the architect. And here, this is a waiver from table 501 footnote 1, which requires the entrance to a garage or covered vehicle passageway faces toward the street, which its driveway has access. Said entrance shall be at least 20 feet from the street lot line, and here it's 16. We went over the design review. Maximum floor area, it's 1. This project is at 3.99. Height, it's 40 feet. And in this particular project, it will exceed 40 feet. It has a proposed height of approximately 67 feet. And then here, we clarified this, that substantial rooftop structures can go 10 feet above the height. And here, the height of the proposed stairhead house is 78 feet, which would exceed the height of the building by 67. But the other systems would be within the 10 feet. So we went over that with Dan Bennett. And also Randolph has taken a look at that. So has our architect. So we modified that language to just be clearer and to take out the other systems. Then ground structures, the garage here has a setback of 0 feet. It's an underground garage to the property line at Heath, Hammond, and Sheafe. So we added those. Polly, I see that someone is waiting, and I guess because I'm the host, I will admit them.
No, I can do it.
Oh,
Yeah.
you got okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so then we go to I, minimum front yard. It's a request for a waiver from the 15-foot minimum. And here we give the distances from each street. Minimum rear yard, it's 30, we have a 15. K, usable open space. We're looking for a waiver from the residential gross floor area. This number is low, especially because it doesn't include the first 10 feet of a front yard, which is excluded from multifamilies under section 5.91. Entrance and exit drives within 20 feet of the property line should be no more greater than a 10% grade. And here it's 14% within 9 feet of the property line. And then required parking for spaces for visitors and tradespeople. We had 5. We did increase it to 8. 10 would be required. That's why there's still a waiver for 2. And then N, there would be normally 94 bicycle parking spaces, and this development proposes 70. EV ready spaces, normally that's 100% be EV ready. This number, we sent in a memo from the deputy chief who agreed with these numbers due to some concerns about the underground parking and having that much EV. Then the demo delay bylaw, we're asking for a waiver from the Preservation Commission review on that. Although highly unlikely that most of these buildings at this site would be historically significant anyway, but that's the waiver there. And then the stormwater bylaw, we're keeping that in. Yeah,
Jennifer,
Maybe you want to
Uh,
add 5 feet from the
do you want me
center.
to add that it's just to our
Yeah.
building? Yes.
correct.
The proposed infiltrations setback. It's actually less than 5 feet from the proposed building, I guess. Is that okay?
That looks good.
Okay, so that's the waiver list.
Thank you. If you could now pull up the updated decision and take us through the changes to that. I think once we get through that, we will hear public comment, and then we will take up the question of whether the board is prepared to vote on the waiver list decision.
Got it. Okay, please bear with me and give me a second. I just saved this so we have it and I can share it with Polly later. Okay.
So with the decision, Jennifer had the master list and we went over and I've asked for several things to be added. We also went over some comments that we received by email from neighborhood people and abutters, and we where we thought it was appropriate, we added some additional language to reflect what they had wanted. And that's what we'll go over tonight.
Thank you, Polly.
Can you see my screen?
Not
Not yet. Okay. Well, give me a minute here. Huh. I'm having trouble pulling it up. I'm gonna try again. I can't seem to pull it up. Give me 1 minute, please. Can you see it now?
no, let's make sure. Make sure that I made you a co-host. Yeah, you're a co-host. Did you find it and you're just having trouble getting it up on the screen?
Yeah, I found it, but oh wait,
There you go.
okay. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so this is the iteration that Polly and I went over, and I'm gonna go over it sort of paragraph by paragraph, and please, of course, Polly, jump in.
Can you make it?
Jennifer, can you zoom a little?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Thank you.
Or a lot.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Is that good? Okay.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm just gonna scroll down to where we were here. There's a date change. So one of the things we did here, which the board had asked us to do, was list all of the applicant materials and then list who the town had on, both from the town testifying and also the peer reviewers. So here we've added the comp permit. We added in that letter from Peter Freeman regarding site control and ownership. Here, let's see, the site plans by our engineers, which were revised as of June 9th. And then we had a stormwater report, that 60-page document that Jim mentioned, and that was revised June 9th. Then we had the engineers' reports and memoranda to the board. There were several cover sheets or memos on various topics. So we added the dates of those. And then we went down here. The architectural plans were revised as of April 11th. Then we made sure that the page numbers matched the actual plans. So we cleaned that up. We added in the shadow studies and the elevation diagrams. We added in the sun study that was submitted to the board early on. Then here, again, noting the revisions as of April 11th. Oh, you asked to make sure that the plans reduce the units to 103, because we had mentioned that one of the documents said 105, and it brought the parking spaces to 116. Again, this is reflecting all of the revisions to date. And then these are the folks that we had on. So we had or provided reports that were submitted, Lord Environmental, with respect to 621 Hammond Street. I added that Mass DEP fact sheet as an exhibit, should the board want to include that. The name of the engineer from Conoco, geotech reports, our Vanass reports, the TDMP that was submitted. There were some pavement marking and signage plans that were submitted, a traffic study, and this notes the landscape plans that were revised March 5th to include that, or the right-of-way improvements, which were the so-called road diet approved by DPW. I was going to add here, with the board's permission, and voted at the Transportation Board on January 15th, if that's okay.
I think that makes sense as a change.
Okay, and then the planting plan was revised to show those right-of-way improvements. This I'm going to change back because we kept in the stormwater bylaw, so the only revision in June to the waiver list was taking it out. So we're using the May 28th version because we're keeping it in.
Jennifer, didn't you make a small change, that the one that Jesse mentioned that you're referencing now? It's a setback from the foundation of the building.
Yeah, I was just
Oh,
going to
yeah.
say that. Yep.
Yeah.
Today's date is correct.
Thank you. Yes, and I'll date that waiver list accordingly. Then these are all the hearings. So this was, if you do close the hearing, if you don't, that date will change. Same thing here. We plugged in.
Jennifer,
Yes,
Jennifer, in 12, can we
Yes.
also make reference to town council?
yes. You want me to add it right here?
Sure.
Okay. This was the language that came out and Johanna said, put it back in, so we did. Then this is the following consultants and town departments that assisted on the town end. So you had Bowman Engineers that did both traffic and parking. So Polly gave me that information. These were removed, that these guys normally are on, but they weren't used for this project. Cliff, Dan Murphy and Dan Martin from DPW. I noted the Transportation Board review and vote. And Dan Bennett, Roland Lanka, which he approved the condition 8. And he reviewed the trash and recycling plan and was satisfied with that. Again, it's conditioned on his final review and approval. But on June 3rd, he sent an email to Polly saying he was all set. Todd Cantor, Judy Barrett wasn't here on this particular matter. And now we move to findings. So we changed number 5 to reflect where it was accurately. Number 8, we added the language that was requested there. Now here, we added reference to the applicant's LSP, what would be done. And then here, this was the section that Wadner had asked there be some more information. So originally we had included like a lot of information, a lot of the summaries of the testimony, but the chair believed it was too much, and so we changed it. Polly and I thought this cleaned it up a little bit and didn't make it so lengthy. So now we here refer to the applicant's LSP describing it at the hearing. And then on June 4th, the RLSP submitted the fact sheet, a copy of which is attached here too. And if the board is inclined to include that exhibit, I would suggest it says attached and incorporated herein as. Board preference on that?
Yes, if you could add that language, please. And I should just say, as we're reviewing this, Wadner and others, as we're going through the updated language, if you have concerns or additional suggestions or additions, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, so I'll just, keep going along and just stop me. So here, we'll have to, this is, this obviously, when Polly makes this a clean version, there'll be a lot of cleanup on the paragraphs and so forth. So here, the board wanted these 2 sections, 12 and 13. I think it was Jesse's suggestion, make this one paragraph because it all goes together. So that was the intent here. And like Polly said at the beginning, all the departments have looked at this language and were in agreement with it, so. So here, on paragraph 14, there was some concern by the neighbors, even though we heard testimony that at the hearing that concerns about basements already getting water. We added extreme rain events because that was one of the concerns that Polly and I read in, I believe, I don't know who said it, but it's only extreme events, right? So we added that word extreme. And some, because they wanted, some of the neighbors wanted to be clear, it's only some, and it's on the record anyway, so, but we added that at the suggestion of one of the neighbors. Any issues with that?
Polly, do you feel like that
Just-
language adequately reflects the comments that we received?
Yes, because the
Most-
neighbors said
that
there
was-
was seepage into the basements, but the basements weren't flooded. Now, seepage, how much seepage there was, I don't know. So that's why we changed this to say that was only in extreme rain events that they had flooding, which they at a hearing said they did have flooding in their basements.
I did recall there being testimony that under existing conditions, there is flooding in the basements. I don't know how much it actually matters and I don't know
Well,
if
was that the testimony was if they not redesign the stormwater system will exacerbate the situation, the flooding? Because there was some comment that they feel like there was misrepresentation to what's said about the basements. I don't know if we,
well, perhaps the solution here is not to use the word flood or to use the word extreme, but to just say, existing conditions whereby, there is water in neighboring basements. I think we'd have some extra words in there that still need to get edited out in the prior sentence, but
Okay, and existing conditions whereby basements at some nearby homes get water. And
maybe we just want to say
Doesn't get
an
water
exist-
in them.
maybe we
I'm
just want
sorry.
to say basements at some nearby homes experience water seepage.
Water overflow.
So at its hearing on April 2nd, the board heard testimony, including abutters' concerns with the stormwater design and existing conditions.
Whereby basements at some nearby homes
I mean, we could
experience
say had seepage of water.
water seepage during rain events.
Yeah.
Seepage, or do you want to use overflow?
I'm
Well,
seeing in the comments, which are not actually comments, that people do not feel like it is overflow. They feel like it is seepage. I'm not sure I
Okay.
know the difference, but
If that's what's in the testimony, okay.
well, I'm not sure that that's what's in the testimony. I know in my own mind, I thought I heard people say that they were getting flooded, but
The testimony is the testimony, and it was, our basements flood. But what, I have no objection to seepage in the basement because we've got transcripts. So if it ever is an issue,
mhm, mhm.
in any event, it's our consultant's opinion that there's no stormwater there, management there now. And if anything, the system is going to improve it. Existing conditions, so. Is everyone all right with this language?
I'm okay with it.
Yes.
Okay. All right, on 19, we just made sure that to take out Boylston Street. We made sure that it says in a single six-story building. So this is going to, the waiver list is changed, was changed. Okay, that's exhibit 2. These will be filled in at a later date once the numbering is corrected.
Jennifer, I got a few edits on this page.
Absolutely, so tell me where.
So a lot of the paragraphs begin prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Yes.
But the first one under fire department says prior to application. Should that also be issuance?
Yes.
Issuance of? And just copy that into the next one also, where it says prior to, I think it should be issuance of building permit.
Okay.
And back up to number one, just kind of minor corrections, but
Yes, please.
on the second line, shall certify in writing to the fire chief and the building commissioner that the building has an enhanced NFPA.
Yeah, it says buildings plural, so.
Yeah, has and then the in the second line, sprinkler system, not systems.
Thank you.
And this is just my last one on this page. It's a sort of different topic under the bullet 3 under the fire department. It just sort of struck me as an odd condition because the project, it says the project shall include no more than 15 EV ready, and I know why the fire deputy chief said that. Is there an issue? Is it appropriate in the conditions to establish a minimum number of these special parking spaces?
Oh, you're saying make sure there are at least 15?
Yeah.
Well, the purpose of
So
the
those
way
are in
that
the
this is written so
plans.
far is the deputy fire chief wants to limit them to no more than 15. But stepping back from his concerns, is it appropriate? And maybe it belongs somewhere other than the fire department
You
review.
could just
But
say shall include 15 EV ready and 15 EV capable parking
So-
spaces.
So I would say that the plans, Dennis, chime in if I'm wrong, the plans already that are going to be approved have the 15 and the 15.
okay, then I don't. Then I'm fine with that.
Okay. So if,
Okay,
if we were gonna modify that, we'd have to come back to you
yeah.
to modify the plan.
I have a question. I'm just asking, would it be appropriate to list it, the fire chief respond to that as an exhibit? So that I think it will be worth that the applicant is not trying to not to meet the requirement for the EV ready spot is because of the fire code. If that exhibit can be in there, but I'm just putting it out there if my colleague will agree to that, whether they agree to that or not. To number 3.
Well, you may know better than I do, but I'm not sure that we typically attach letters or emails from department heads or staff to these decisions.
Yeah, we really don't usually do that.
Okay, that's fine. I was just asking because I know that
Well, let's
there's a
just make sure, to Wadner's point, let's just make sure that that's listed as a record document. And if it is,
We did at the top.
then we've got that reference already in there, Wadner, to the compiled record of the proceedings.
all right.
Okay, so traffic mitigation, there was a request from one of the neighbors that we be clear that the applicant is going to pay for any signage, so we added that.
Can I go back to 4? It's the issuance is capitalized. I don't know when it should be prior to.
Yeah, you're right, but the others, it's not.
Thank you.
Good.
So that was the change that Polly and I made to make sure that that was clear, that any signage would also be paid for and everything would comply with the town's specs. Stop me at any point here. Dan Martin reviewed this language and he was okay with it. Here in the health department review, we had sent some supplemental information to Roland Lanka, the Assistant Director of Health, and he reviewed all this language and was fine with it. It just gets into the specific about the bins and number, but it also says that, again, everything's subject to his review and approval before building permit.
Jennifer, just a minor typo on the trash chute bullet. Will be acoustically lined, past tense.
Oh, yes.
Thanks.
Yes. Then on number 9,
Yes, we added this again at the request of one of the neighbors. Although we think typically that there would be monitoring baiting strategies.
yeah,
Uh,
that's part of any rodent control plan that's going to be approved by the health department, but there was a request to add it expressly, so we did. Stop me if there's anything you see here.
Can I ask a question about the end of paragraph 11? This is the one about the pre-construction survey.
Yes.
What's the purpose? And is it, maybe Polly could comment, is this conventional to have this last sentence, any damage to structures within this area? Is the operative part of the sentence the sort of within this area? Is it trying to focus on surveyed basements especially?
Well, it could
This
be.
made me pause.
It could be foundations as well.
But is the sentence, what I was sort of looking for, and maybe this is just sort of what I was expecting it to say. I was looking for a relationship of that sentence to everything that comes before it in the paragraph, which is about giving the applicant access to, ascertain the conditions in those basements. And what I thought was odd about that last sentence is that it doesn't distinguish between structures that the applicant has had access to and the ones they haven't had access to. And then it's just also, I'm not sure what within this area means. If that sentence weren't there, would the applicant's responsibilities be exactly as this is trying to make them?
So I think what you're saying, Randolph, is it should say any damage to structures that were surveyed?
I think that
Is that what you're saying?
Well, I know, I don't really know. I wonder whether it needs to be there at all. It just seems, it just sort of jumps from this information gathering process to consequences, or responsibility. And I just wonder whether whether we really need it to do that. Whether we're trying to use this, the conditions of the project to establish liability.
I think it's a safeguard to the neighbors to, specifically say that it's going to be the applicant who would pay for any repairs that are damaged due to the construction.
Well, but if that's, sorry, Wedner, I just want to respond to Polly. I mean, Polly, if that's the case, then you could take out the phrase within this area and put it anywhere in the document, because I hope that would be the case, that if neighbors' property is damaged by the construction of the project, that they would, the applicant and their construction contractor would be liable. But I just think,
and Randolph, you're right, they would be regardless of what we put in this decision. I mean, that's just Massachusetts tort law.
Okay.
Right.
All right, then it could be eliminated.
I was gonna ask a question related to Randolph's question. Is there in terms of perimeter, how far the impact will reach the existing abutters or other house around that when they're doing the blasting or digging? Maybe that's what if it's possible, we could leave. I don't know how far the impact.
We have a whole blasting section.
Yeah, with Wadner, for this paragraph starts out with stating two properties. So we're really just talking about 557 and 22.
Yes.
And it has to do with demo. This has to do with demolition of the existing structures.
So what's the concern? Is that, Randolph, are you referring to when the word this area is too broad in terms of liability, or you want that to be restricted to?
Well, you really don't have to say within this area because it's just for those two buildings. Is that correct, Randall?
Yeah, maybe they can, refer back to those two buildings. We reference above. Maybe that's.
I don't.
But again, Randolph, I think to your point, we don't need it at all because
I don't think we need it at all. Thank you.
I don't know why that happened, but whatever, we'll fix it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll fix the numbering. I'm not gonna deal with that now. Okay, so let me keep going here. So wanted to make clear that prior to even the demo permit, we have to go through DPW site plan review. Prior to issuance of the demo permit again, site plan review. In the environmental, we've increased the payment for the town's LSP. We've agreed, the applicant has agreed. Polly wanted that doubled, so the applicant agreed to that.
It is up to that amount, and the amount that's not spent is returned, but I felt that most of the peer review people that we've hired have been more than 7,500.
And it's up to, right, Polly? So we'd get the balance back if there
Yes.
was any.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, then here. This is all, I think we went over all of this.
In
Yes, E. Okay,
E, do you mean abutters or do you mean neighbors?
I mean abutters within 300 feet of the site.
You do you do mean abutters. You don't. So
They
wouldn't
are
there be
neighbors.
wouldn't there be neighbors who are within 300 feet?
Well, perhaps we should add abutters and abutters to abutters within 300 feet.
I mean, that's typically when we say abutters, we mean abutters to abutters, but guess it can't hurt to say that.
So you wanted to say the one meeting with abutters, two abutters within?
What with abutters and abutters to abutters within 300 feet.
With abutters and abutters to abutters.
Yep.
I mean,
Okay.
that's,
Okay.
Jennifer, just a minor item on number 21 here. The
Yes,
the first line of it, the applicant shall state in writing. Can we say to whom the applicant makes this statement?
sorry, where are
It-
you? Oh, the
prior to the
applicant shall
commencement of
state in
construction.
writing.
Yeah, who is that statement made to?
Applicant shall state in writing. So this should be to the building commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think there's any changes here. We just have to number them. Here we go into blasting conditions. The building commissioner wanted to make sure that it was fire chief here. Here we change the radius to 500 feet. Added fire chief for the building commissioner's request. I don't think we had any other changes requested by the board here. Of course, all of these conditions will be filled in.
A little thing in F, Jennifer, just after the red text, changed has to have.
Thank you.
And then a couple more down under, I think it's I. This title appears a lot, the director for, I think it's the director of housing and community planning. Polly, you would know for sure. Is this?
well,
Yes, it is.
That appears a lot on the coming page.
Okay, we'll make sure we change that. Here, on local preference, I wanted to add after here, just because this is language required by state and federal fair housing law, that it be for no more than 70% of the affordable units, and Polly can check with Jonathan or Emily on that, but that language needs to be in here.
Okay. It's number 56.
So, subject to Emily's review, Polly, huh?
Right, I will check with her.
Jennifer,
Okay.
58, again, that title, Director of Housing and Community Planning.
Okay.
57, well, I don't know, it's director of a housing, the word "and," I don't know whether we should change it to the letters "N."
I'm so sorry.
57, yeah, director of housing, well, the way "and" is.
An
whether we should
ampersand.
use-
Ampersand, yeah, make it an end.
Oh, you want it
The
spelled
word
out?
"and," use the word "and" to be consistent. Yeah,
Here?
get rid, yep.
Just on this one, just to note that we ran this by Dan this morning, got the right numbers here, and this is the 4-to-1 to make sure that affordable units are getting COs at the same rate as the market rate. So Dan got back to Polly and I, and he's satisfied with that language.
That language in 63,
Yes.
but
Yes,
does that accurately reflect? Does that actually reflect the ratio? I mean, it's 4-to-1. That's basically what it's supposed to mean, isn't it?
Mhm.
it is. It is supposed to mean that, and we needed to make sure that these two, added up to the 103
Right.
units.
I would honestly, I would never get a 4-to-1 ratio out of sort of how that's phrased. I guess I'm okay. It'd be hard to screw with it, but it's just, I just don't get the phrasing of it, frankly.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing, honestly, and but the building commissioner signed off
Yeah.
on. It's in other.
Is it? Because I liked it when the phrasing was for every, 4 units, right, of affordable housing, there'll be 1 unit of non-affordable units. That makes sense to me. That's your 4-to-1 ratio. This
Yeah,
sort of, I don't get at all, but if there's no way to wiggle around it, I guess I don't care.
yeah. I mean, I do think that there's an easier way to say it, just like you said it, Jesse, and maybe it
We've
means the
said
same.
it. It's indecisions.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll leave it alone. All right, going down. Let's see what else I have here. Oh, we had put the blasting conditions right into the document rather than as a schedule, which made more sense. And then this is the fact sheet that I had sent around that our LSP and Wardner wanted some more detail, and if the board thinks it makes sense, that we'll keep that in there. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Board, any more questions or comments on the revised draft decision and conditions that we've just reviewed, or are we ready for public comment? Jesse?
Ready for public comment.
Wadner?
Ready for public comment.
Randolph?
No more questions. And I just want to say, Jennifer, thank you for the waiver edits. I'm glad we didn't even have to discuss those. That was in great shape. And I'm ready for public comment.
Terrific. Thank you, board. We are now going to have public comment. I think it would be most helpful for public comment to focus on the stormwater design changes, which were newly presented this evening, and any comments on the proposed waiver list or the proposed draft decision. I will observe before we start public comment that it is already 9 o'clock. We have been at this for 2 hours this evening. So I would ask members of the public who wish to comment to please do what you can to be concise and abbreviated, and not to repeat comments that you have either submitted to the board in writing in advance of this hearing, or that you have made at prior meetings. And I would also remind members of the public to please be civil and respectful in making your comments to this board. With that, Polly, if you could queue folks up for comment. Commenters, please remember to provide your name and address before you begin speaking.
You want people who want to comment to put their name in the chat?
Yes, as we said at the outset, if you do wish to provide public comment tonight, please do put your name in the chat and you will be called in the order in which you have put your name in.
Right now, there is no one in the chat. Let me just make sure I'm correct.
I see that Janice Kahn would like to comment.
Yes. Okay. Janet, you can unmute and begin your comment.
Okay. So thank you very much. And thank you very much to this board for your very hard work on a complicated case. So much appreciation. So I have a couple of brief comments. One is I was able to speak with First Assistant Town Council Jonathan Simpson yesterday, who was reassuring about the drop-off location, that it remains under town control and is a public amenity, which was good. So, but my concern is that anyone walking by might assume that it belongs to the project and not in the public way. So I respectfully request that you include in the conditions under condition 4 that references this drop-off, that this remains in the public way and for public use. And when I mentioned that to Jonathan, he thought that that was a reasonable thing to put in there, just as a clarification. I remain concerned about human behavior and the way people will actually try to reach that, not wanting to sit in traffic on Route 9, take a right at the light on Hammond Street, hit another light to take another right to get to this drop-off. And so I also urge that the engineering work with the applicant to design this drop-off in a way that it cannot be accessed from the west. Because if I was going to go there, I would definitely get off Route 9, go up Holly Lane, take a left wrong way on Heath Street to get to that area. Much, much quicker than sitting on Route 9. So that's a second request. When you talk about signage, I think it's also important that we add signage again at that end of Holly Lane, to Heath Street, that you cannot take a left. Make it really clear. I haven't looked at it recently. I know there's one at Tully Street, but I'm not sure about the signage at the end of Holly Lane, but it needs to be really clear. That's where people are going to go. That there's no left turn at that point. And I guess so those are my comments, just to make it safer for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks, Janice.
Nina Crowley wishes to speak. Nina, you can unmute and go ahead and speak.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Okay, hi. This is Nina Crowley. So I have still remain concerned about the stormwater system. So I want to highlight the critical and concerning omission from the board review process during the town engineer Q&A question, during Dan Murphy's question session. It did not mention the Mass DEP Stormwater Standard 5, which is to deal with potentially contaminated land stormwater infiltration system. So that is a standard 5, and in the applicant's engineer for stormwater report, they says not applicable. So I did spoken with Dan Murphy this afternoon right before the hearing, and he agreed that's applicable. It cannot be omitted. So that is not complying with the Massachusetts the stormwater standard. So this project is being built on a site that including a formal dry cleaner and auto repair garage, according to the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, Volume 1, Chapter 1, and page 21. This use are specifically classified as LUHPPLS, yet the applicant's drainage report incorrectly claimed the standard 5 is not applicable. So this is a factual and regulatory error. Standard 5 is not optional. It is designed to protect groundwater, public health, and abutting properties from infiltration or of toxic runoff. For LHPPLS, the law requires pretreatment before any infiltration, which is the system does not provide, and testing of soil and groundwater to rule out contamination, which has not been done. Any avoidance of infiltration entirely if those tests are not available, which is the case here. So most concerning, this issue was not addressed by the town engineer in this meeting. However, I did have a talk with Dan, and he agrees that it is applied. So I respectfully request the board to double check with Dan and put the standard 5 into the condition and approval of this project. If you, in the end, the approval should be contingency on application of this standard 5. So the response is incomplete without analyzing the site's pollution history under standard 5. On top of this, there is no stamping engineer plan showing the revised infiltration system's actual location, depth, and proximity to neighbors' foundation, and no contaminant from the developer to provide certified as a build plan, no commitment provide as a certified as a build plan post-construction. So we request pre and post-construction certified plan to confirm that the stormwater design, redesign, and relocation, it is in fact as is stated. So we have a system sit on a potentially contaminated land within feet of a century-old home, approved on paper with no ESA, no testing, and no full standard 5 review. So I respectfully urge the board do not finalize this particular condition. So we do want to put this back because otherwise you're not complying with Massachusetts law. And this is, of course, is hand to hand with the phase 1 ESA and then potentially phase 2 if it calls for, and also groundwater testing. And so far, there is no groundwater testing done. So whatever the test pit the applicant presented in the past is only 8 feet deep, but the under 10 feet is a bedrock formation discovered during the geotechnical report or study. So the groundwater testing is supposed to be about 20 feet deep. So this is what I want to point out, and providing the stamped stormwater plan with verified setbacks and elevations. And so comments to before and after. Without this step, I think the board risks approving a project that violates state stormwater policy and compromise health and safety of the neighborhood. And then I want to add on top of this, when at the beginning of, applicant's counsel made a comment says it's border the defamation. So I do want to make a comment here. So yesterday when we received revised plan, it's not today's plan. It is a show, it's not 10 feet from the lot line. So today's plan did move further for 4 more feet. So all comments in the email, my comments in the email questioning why the engineer represent the applicant's engineer in their signed letter stating, I just double checked again, stating now is meeting the requirement, the setback from the lot line. We did not making up things. I did not. It's a factual. Okay, so I want to make this clear. And then the other things concerning is, obviously we're concerned about the blasting technique because all CHCA consultant, geotechnical consultant, provide a full peer review report, many page. The highlight of the peer review report, which was submitted October 2024, indicate and recommend within 50 feet of old structure, central old structure, and no blasting method should choose alternative method. And then of course the site is more than 50 feet. The other side you can do whatever you want. And of course the before and after construction survey need be conducted. I don't think it's just basement. It should be the whole structure, whole walls, every building, every level, every layer. But I want to point out this, but this is not in the document. I did spend hours put comments into this document, and we talked with Polly, and Polly suggests that we should provide a version with our own comment, with language. So we did. I feel sad that tonight I don't see any of my comments there. We worked on hours, and several nights I didn't sleep until 1:30 p.m. because a long document. And then conditions, most important, the condition, we request the applicant developer set aside 1.5 million escrow fund to as needed repair in case there is a damage. We also want the condition that the applicant will agree to pay any legal and expert consultant fees involving recouping of damage and repair, because we do not think the abutter or the people who suffer this have to bearing the financial cost because of this damage caused by the applicant. So this is missing, and this is in my comments. So I just feel this whole process, most of people is good, but then the things is in the end, the most important document that we are asked for supply the language. We did. Multiple people, not just me, but I don't see the comments. For example, I made a comment to ask to delete one of the paragraph I feel is inaccurate because the quoting the applicant's LSP says, or if there is many method to mitigate the environmental pollution thing, and then for example, sub-slab depressurization, and that is a misunderstanding of that sentence. The slab depressurization SSD method is only used for indoor. When you have a building made and then you still have the polluted air, so that is a method is effective, but it's not for outdoor. So when we are concerned about when you're digging this whole site, potentially have a high level of contaminants that also is volatile. And then this is very toxic to people who live nearby, and just like a gas, if you don't put the order in it, you don't know that until you already get sick and then and have a cancer causing a few years later, and nobody notices. So I think the town have a responsibility to make our life safer, but that is missing from this whole review. And then with a lot of other, for example, bumping out the public way, calling is this is not giving the land away, but however, doing this to changing the traffic pattern because you narrow the street now. You brought over 100 families into this narrow street, which already does not have enough public parking, street parking. And now you did even further by narrow down the street and causing possibly backup in the intersection. So all this big movement, and you did not have a traffic analysis, because I did have a conversation with Dan Martin about this, and he admitted in the email they did not do the safety analysis for this change, which is required. And you know, even it's not required as a town town staff or represent town to approving this project, you should ask critical questions and put your foot into our shoe. And that's all what I try to comment.
Thank you. Next comment.
Gerald Watts wants to speak. If he would unmute himself, he could give his comments.
I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a Luddite, so please forgive me for my late coming on. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for putting in the hours for this project. It's already late, everyone wants to go to bed, but I appreciate you listening to the developer and the neighbors with our concerns. And thank you especially for being allowing Nina to speak for the length of time she did. She does represent most of the neighbors here, so we did defer our time to her. So thank you very much for your patience in listening to her. Besides what she's already brought up, there was just a couple of things that I noticed during the talk regarding the prospect of basements getting flooded or wet. You know, it's all what your definition of flooded is. My basement gets damp during heavy rains, but no, it doesn't get flooded. But some people might define that as, oh, it's definitely got a problem. But we're happy to have some kind of examination of our basements performed now to assess its current risk of flooding. And if something detrimental does happen in the future following construction, then that way we've got some kind of documentation to say this wasn't a problem before. Also, personally speaking, I'm an abutter to an abutter to an abutter, but I still fall within the 300-foot range of proximity. So am I also covered by any damage that might happen during the construction and blasting, or is it literally an abutter to an abutter, just 2 doors down? These houses are literally next door to each other. And I think after this building, there's a big apartment complex, but that's definitely outside the 300-foot range. So just wondering whether myself and my north-facing neighbor that I share a back fence with are also covered by this 300-foot protection or not. That's it. Once again, thank you very much for listening to our concerns. I'm not sure when you're going to vote, but when you do so, please, as Nina said, please put yourselves in our shoes and just, if you would take into consideration the health of the neighborhood. We've got young kids living here as well. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Polly, is there anyone else who wishes to provide public comment?
Let me do one final check, but no, there is not.
There are a couple of things I want to just briefly respond to, and then I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing for this project. I want to let the neighbors know that the board did receive the neighbors, particularly Ms. Crowley's suggestions and requested revisions to the decision, and where feasible, those requested changes have been incorporated into the document. If changes have not been incorporated into the document, for example, requests that the developer post a bond to cover, litigation costs associated with damage, that's outside of the purview and the jurisdiction of this board on a 40B project, and really any project. I know it's not a terribly satisfying answer, but, to the extent that a private property owner does, suffer damage to their property as a result of a construction project in their neighborhood, it's not a board matter, but it is a private right of action. And you would, at that point in time, have the option of pursuing damages in court against the developer if the property is, damaged in a way that's documented. But some of these things that we were asked to do, it's simply not within the legal jurisdiction of this board to put into a permit decision. I do also want to highlight that with respect to the stormwater plan, there is a condition in here that says that, the applicant will provide plans for review and approval of the Director of Engineering and Transportation for erosion control and stormwater management plans to control stormwater runoff as part of DPW's site review process. So the review of the stormwater runoff plans and system will continue to be vetted by town staff as this project progresses. I do want to, I think there are a couple of things in the decision that we can revisit, and I would like to, but I would like to entertain a motion by someone on the board so that we can vote on closing the public hearing.
Joanna, can I ask a procedural question about voting before we do that?
Sure.
I'm the alternate here, and all 4 of us are present. So do I need to vote?
That would be a great question for Jonathan Simpson.
Oh, Jonathan.
But I don't think he is. I would say in an abundance of caution. Oh,
I'm here.
There. Oh,
Sorry.
hey, Jonathan. Does Randolph as the alternate vote on this?
No, he does not.
Oh, Randolph, you get a pass.
Can't.
Okay.
I can't ever talk.
Okay.
Johanna.
Yes, Jesse.
Before we close the,
Jesse, you are now muted.
very strange, but okay.
Cursed.
Janice Kahn has made what I thought were some pretty reasonable requests. And I just want to make
agree,
sure.
and that's what I want to revisit in the decision after we close public comment.
Okay, but I want to be clear procedurally, the parameters once we close the hearing of the discussion about those added conditions. I just want to make sure we are doing this in the correct order.
So you would like to leave the public hearing open until we address the addition of that language into the decision, which I'm fine.
Yeah, I think we have to.
Okay, very well. Jennifer or Polly, could I ask one of you to please pull up the draft decision? There are, as Jesse mentioned, we did receive a few comments from neighbor and town meeting member Janice Kahn that, like Jesse, struck me as being reasonable and potentially able to be addressed with some wording changes, understanding that we're being asked to put language in here about signage and routing of traffic that has not been vetted by any town staff. And so I think that to the extent that we are going to incorporate this language, we have to be extremely cautious in how we draft this so that, you know, the applicant will coordinate with, I don't know if it's DPW or the Director of Engineering and Transportation, you know, to add signage as appropriate to minimize cut throughs and left turns off Holly Lane.
Also note, Janice has proposed non-specifically some design alternative in the drop-off spot that essentially prevents wrong-way drivers from accessing it. And I'm not technically sure how to achieve it, let alone articulate it for purposes of the decision. But I understand conceptually what her idea is.
Well, perhaps, and Jennifer, I would welcome your feedback on this. We can add also that the applicant will coordinate with town staff to develop a system for ensuring that the drop-off is not improperly used.
So yeah, I would like to speak to that. I have no objection to Janice's language. I heard two things. Let's make sure that it's clear that it's public property. I think it's overkill. It's never going to be not public property, but happy to put that language in there that the bump out remains public property. That's a given everywhere that this happens on all these road diets that are happening all over town. Happy to put that language in there. Whether or not the town wants a no left turn on Holly Lane, that has to be decided by DPW.
Exactly.
If they have to make two decisions. Number one, they have to decide that that's a smart thing to do. And number two, they have to decide that it's needed because of the impact of this change in the road diet or the change to the project. If they determine those two things, then they will say one of the signs applicant you need to put up is a no turn on Holly. If they do that, of course we'd have to, right, to comply. This all goes through an extensive review again with DPW. So I'm happy to add language that says the public way remains the property of the town and open to the public. And when we say including any signage, I mean, I think I could say, and road signage approved by the town, right?
I think that the request is a little
No.
more robust than that.
Okay.
which is that you will consult with the town about
Okay.
appropriate signage to ensure safe traffic flow on streets adjacent to the project site.
Okay, so prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall, we could put it here, consult with the town, and then we could say, and provide a plan. Does it make sense to go there?
Doesn't the transportation board have to vote on that signage or not?
It has to go to the transportation board. Changes, parking, signage, all of that it goes from staff with a recommendation. But of course, the applicant will work with the town on any signage, anything that has to relate to this project. It happens all the time. So I'm happy to add that language, but it's part of this whole process. But Johanna, do you want it added to this first sentence here?
Why don't we say shall coordinate with the Director of Engineering and Transportation and other appropriate town staff regarding additional signage necessary to ensure.
Johanna, can I jump in here for a sec? We're in a sort of header paragraph that has a number of dependent bullets.
But they're
Shouldn't this-
different now because they're
What?
different than this.
Well, it's,
I'm just saying additional signage, to put additional signage in the header paragraph, that doesn't really belong at the head of this, the other of the bullets that are already there. I think the coordinate and all that stuff does, but I wonder whether there ought to be just another bullet about additional signage, because again, this is
Well, but the
following
problem, Randolph, that I'm trying to avoid is the provide a plan and necessary supporting documentation language that's already there doesn't go with coordinating signage for safety.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Can I just add just one thing? And I know this is a little anecdotal, but I just went on Google Street View and looked at this intersection. There is, as of the Google Street View car driving by, there's already a no left turn sign and a do not enter sign for the left turners at that location. So that may be our baseline.
Maybe we should just have,
what about this?
I think that's fine, but to Randolph's point, perhaps we want to lift this all out and make it like a new paragraph 5.
Okay,
Oh, I see what you're doing. Yeah, I agree with that.
Put it here.
Yeah, put it there as a new 5. Yep.
There's probably a prior to the issuance, preamble to it.
So
The beginning.
this is likely to be CO.
Yep.
Okay,
Should we use prior in the beginning of the sentence since to be consistent?
No,
Sure.
Prior to the applicant shall.
Yeah, I think that's right, Wagner.
You want to say to mitigate traffic and safety impacts from the project? Yeah, or safety.
Hmm.
Good.
And Janice has emphasized the drop-off spot, but I'm not sure how they can design it so that you can only enter it from one way.
It's gonna be reviewed by, the plans are gonna be submitted. They're not gonna be approved unless the drop off works. I don't know how much more you can add on that.
I think there's also something to be said for to Jennifer's point that these are recurring, these happen all over town. It's a good thing if they're kind of all the same. People, driving in them would like to expect similar conditions. I'm just saying that from a design viewpoint.
Yeah, the town has very specific dimensions, how the bump outs, where the curbs go, the distance, the materials
The
used.
angles, yeah.
Yeah, everything.
What about the language that it's women, the public property?
That's that first bullet, right?
So,
I think that's on the record, Wadner. That it's public property.
There seemed to be a request, though, that we be more explicit about it.
so it would go here, right? It would just say that the extension of the sidewalk and any bump out area shall remain,
Public property.
yeah.
And I wonder if we might add to this list of bullets that are being reviewed. This is number 4. Could we add a bullet about the safety and functionality of the drop-off?
A separate bullet?
Yeah.
So here it would say,
that the drop-off area is safe and functional.
so wouldn't it be that the transportation staff shall review? I mean,
Well,
of
this
course
is this.
review it.
So the header to 4 says, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall provide a plan and necessary documentation to the Director of Engineering and Transportation for review and approval that demonstrates the following.
Okay. Pedestrians and vehicles too, right?
Pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles.
Okay.
And then I did want to also go back to this abutters within 300 feet. Only because we did receive a question. I think this is 20, I don't know what the renumbering, if we're at 23 or 24 or 25.
Is it in the blasting?
Right here.
Why not just say properties within
I
300?
think it's in the environmental.
It's
Right
right here. Yeah.
It was 21E.
Property owners.
Can you see it? It's right here.
Yes.
And how did you want to change it?
Maybe instead of abutters, could we put property owners and residents? Of buildings within 300 feet?
I have no objection to that. It's fine.
I mean, I think it's the intent of this.
Yeah.
Johanna, is the 300-foot standard normally applied to the limits of properties or to the edges of buildings? I thought it was the former, and it would capture more if you took out buildings. If you have, so somebody whose property is within 300 feet, but if the building is farther, yeah, I think that's gets more people.
Right. So say of lots within 300 feet?
Joanna, can I ask the questions? The residents, can you maybe elaborate why we're using the resident? Because the resident.
Because if they're tenants, they're not property owners, and they should still be entitled to notice.
Oh, you mean the notice? Okay, all right. I thought it was for damage. Okay.
I have nothing further in the decision based on public comment. Do any other board members have anything else they'd like to add to this draft decision at this time?
I have nothing to add.
Jesse?
Other than our typical provision that should the board vote in favor of the decision that the final version of the decision and language that the chair for the hearing be authorized to review and approve the final clean version.
Right. I think that's a motion when we're preparing to vote, though, not language to add to the decision. I don't think that usually goes in the decision. Does it?
No.
No, it's part of the vote.
Okay. So I think we are approaching being ready to vote on the waivers. Polly or Jonathan, I candidly don't remember if we typically close the public hearing before we vote on the waivers or if the order doesn't matter.
Well, I think you can close the public hearing because the applicant and the board have agreed to the waivers already, so there's not going to be any further discussion.
Right, that was my recollection of how we typically do it. So does anyone want to move to close the public hearing on this project?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Wagner OJ.
Aye.
Jesse Geller.
Yes.
I also vote yes, the public hearing on this matter is now closed. We will now proceed to a vote on the waivers. We typically do vote these one by one. Polly or Jennifer, could I trouble you to please pull up the waiver list one more time?
Are you saying each waiver has to be voted on separately?
I think that's how we typically do it.
Yes.
Happy to pull that up.
Thank you.
Okay, you're gonna have to give me a minute to find it now. Sorry. that coming up?
Got it. Thank you. But I think that we want the document revised as of June 10th, not
Right.
May 28th.
Correct. And I think it's June 11th, right? Because we changed it
Oh
to,
gosh, you're right. Yes, lost a day
yeah,
somewhere.
Please let me speak.
okay.
Please let me speak.
Ms. Curtin, we have already closed the public.
I know, but
With respect to waiver A, Jesse Geller, how do you vote?
Yes.
Wadner, how do you vote?
Yes.
I also vote yes. With respect to waiver B, Jesse Geller,
Yes.
Wadner,
Yes.
I vote yes. Waiver C, Jesse,
Yes.
Wadner,
Yes.
I vote yes. Waiver D,
Yes.
Wadner,
Yes.
I vote yes. Waiver E, Jesse,
Yes.
Wadner,
Yes.
I also vote yes. Waiver F,
Yes.
Jesse, Wadner,
Yes.
I vote yes. Waiver G, Jesse,
Yes.
waiver G, Wadner,
Yes.
waiver, I vote yes. Waiver H, Jesse,
Yes.
waiver H, Wadner,
Yes.
I also vote yes on waiver H. Waiver I, Jesse,
Yes.
waiver I, Wadner,
Yes.
I vote yes on waiver I. Waiver J, Jesse,
Yes.
waiver J at Wadner,
Yes.
I vote yes on waiver J. Waiver K, Jesse,
Yes.
waiver K, Wadner,
Yes.
I vote yes on waiver K. Waiver L, Jesse,
Yes.
waiver L, Wadner,
Yes.
I vote yes on waiver L. Waiver M, Jesse,
Yes.
waiver M, Wadner,
Yes.
I vote yes on waiver M. Waiver N, Jesse,
Yes.
waiver N, Wadner,
Yes.
I vote yes on waiver N. Waiver O, Jesse,
Yes.
waiver O, Wadner,
Yes.
please help
I
me.
vote yes.
Please help
Oh.
me.
Holly, could I ask you to mute anybody who's not on the board as
Yes,
we're
I
voting
will
right
do
now?
that.
Thank you. With respect to, and I vote yes on waiver O. Waiver P, Jesse,
Yes.
waiver P, Wadner,
Yes.
I vote yes on waiver P.
Can we just make sure that this is not an emergency issue?
It's
Holly.
not, it's not.
Okay.
It is. It is. My life is an emergency issue to this issue.
Okay. I'm sorry, Johanna, go on.
Waiver Q, Jesse.
Yes.
Waiver Q, Wadner,
Yes.
and I vote yes on waiver
I will
Q.
take you to court for. Will take you to court for.
I think not.
Take you to court forever when you.
Okay, the waivers have been approved. Now we need to vote on whether we are going to approve this project and adopt the decision that we have reviewed this evening. Jesse Geller,
Yes, I vote to approve. I think it meets the requirements under 40B.
Wadner,
I vote to approve. I agree with my colleague Jesse.
I also vote to approve the project and to adopt the decision that we have reviewed at tonight's public hearing. And I would ask that the board authorize me to review and finalize the final permit decision. Jesse,
Yes, I vote in favor.
Wadner.
Yes. Yes.
And with that, this matter is concluded. It has been a very long hearing process. The board greatly appreciates the feedback and participation that we have received from abutters. We have done the best that we can under the confines of 40B, which is a state statute, to try to resolve outstanding issues and approve a housing project that we are by law required to approve. And to build into the decision as many conditions as possible to balance local concerns with the mandate to.
This is not democracy.
Polly, if I could just ask you to mute.
This is not my democracy. This is not my democracy. I don't care. I don't care. My grandparents built this neighborhood. You have no feelings. The only one who cares anything is Warner Ode. And I wrote to Polly today, and I've known her for years. She doesn't care. I don't care about you. Okay? I care about my neighborhood. I was cut off by Zoom or something. I didn't do anything.
And that concludes tonight's hearing on this comprehensive permit.
Fuck you. Fuck all of you, except Warner.
Leave the meeting now.
Okay, our business tonight is concluded. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, fellow board members and town staff, for your cooperation during these many long months.
Thank you, Johanna.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.